and
Perfect.
everybody can see me.
Okay.
I still look really washed out. There's a lot of sun that comes in my front window there, so I apologize for that.
You're good.
So Wendy wanted me to do a discussion like I did for her coworker Ken, and it's mostly centered around my book. Not that I'm trying to sell you my book. If you want to get my book, it's available on Amazon. But that's, this is not it's not a book reading or a book selling. But there's some things in the book that I've made into a presentation called Organizing to Reduce Anxiety After Large Life Events. We in the organizing field recognize that that's usually when people tend to build up their clutter is around major life events, a catastrophic illness or injury or accident, a house fire. Actually, the woman we worked on the episode of Hoarders, her hoarding may have started because of a house fire in her past. The loss of a spouse or a close family member, could be spouse, child, could be multiple losses. I had one client that lost 4 loved ones, a mother, husband, her mother, her sister, and then her best friend, all within like a 12-month period. And she was just so paralyzed, she couldn't even pay her bills. If it wasn't for me going in there to pay her bills, she may have lost her house. So it starts with this paradigm shift from any major life circumstance, a cancer diagnosis, a change of jobs, a growing family, anything like that, changing houses. Those are all stressors that everybody deals with throughout their life. And there's usually a huge paradigm shift when that happens because we live such ordinary, routine lives. And then when you introduce something completely foreign, it just seems like your whole world has been shaken. And I talk about this in my book. In 1994, my father passed away. He was 58 years old. He was not sick, but he died in bed one evening. And I was 33 years old, and I didn't know how to handle that. I mean, I just feel like my world was rocked. And I couldn't understand how the world just kept spinning and turning, and people kept going to work and grocery shopping and taking their kids to school. It didn't make any sense to me at all. So it's that trauma, loss, or diagnosis that creates that paradigm shift. And so now you don't have the same reality you had before that situation. So now you have to realize that things are always going to be different. And that grief sets in. For me, it became complicated grief. I don't know if you know a lot about grief, but the book Restore Order, Restore Joy, How to Get Your Life in Order After a Loss, talks about 3 types of ordinary grief or regular grief. And then there's what's called complicated grief. And I think that's what I experienced when my father died. Anticipatory grief is the kind of grief that you experience with the death of a loved one. If it's just around the corner, such as in the case of terminal illness or an ailing elderly family member. While painful, some psychologists believe this type of grief may help to shorten the post-death grief process because so many of the related emotions are worked through ahead of time. That's anticipatory grief. Unanticipated grief, the type of grief is often associated with unexpected loss, such as from an accident, heart attack, or other surprise event. They did rule my father's death a cardiac episode. Ambiguous grief, this form is the result of a circumstance where there is little or no closure about the unfortunate event. For example, if a loved one is kidnapped and never found, a pet runs away, a child abandons, or a parent abandons a child, or a child abandons a parent. That would be ambiguous grief. There's also complicated grief, which is listed in the DSM-5 as a mental health disorder. The American Psychological Association estimates that 15% of bereaved people are at risk for developing complicated grief. According to the APA, this form of grief is more severe than typical grief and is characterized by feelings of meaninglessness, changes in personal beliefs, exaggerated searching or yearning for the deceased, and marked shifts in personal relationships. 2 years after my father passed away,
Dorothy, you got muted.
Unmute, yeah.
Yeah, you got me muted, Dorothy.
okay. Yeah, I did see a little notice come up that everybody was muted. I apologize. What's the last thing I said?
I got unmuted too.
Does anybody remember where I left off?
Shifts in the personal relationship.
Okay, shifts in the personal relationship. Let me go back
Yes.
there then. Okay, so a year after my father passed away, I left my husband. We had been married almost 12 years. I left in March. We would have celebrated 12 years in June. So that's another huge stressor in most people's lives, is separation or divorce. And then a year after that, I lost my job. So in the 2 years following my dad's death, I experienced 2 more major stressors. I could not cope with or get through my grief because I was drinking. I was abusing alcohol. And I'm here to tell you today, I'm 24 years sober. I got sober in May 1996, and that's in my book also. My life had come to, it had spiraled out of control after all these events, 3 events in 3 years. A lot of it due to the last 2 due to my drinking. But it wasn't until I got sober that I actually went through the grieving process for the death of my dad and the loss of my marriage. At that point, without the alcohol, I was able to experience the emotions. So that was my paradigm shift. That was my trauma loss and my diagnosis. So complicated grief led me to alcoholism. No, a lot is not known about alcoholism. I may have gone to alcoholism eventually, but the death of my father really propelled it forward. So one of the things that I like to tell people about grief is that it affects you physically. It's not just about the shock and the disbelief and the longing and yearning. And if it goes on long enough, it can have devastating effects to your physical system. So it's important, self-care, the basics of self-care of your body, mind, and spirit are extremely important. In the book, we talk about these are all the ways your body may react to losses that you encounter in life. Muscle aches and pains, shortness of breath, feelings of emptiness in the stomach, tightness in your throat and chest, digestive problems, sensitivity to noise, heart palpitations, queasiness or nausea, headaches, increased allergy symptoms, changes in appetite leading to weight loss or weight gain, agitation, and tension. This is why taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually is so important when you're going through anything associated with a diagnosis, a loss, or a trauma, because there's always grief associated with those things. So You want to make sure that you're getting quality sleep. That is the number one thing that keeps us healthy, is getting quality sleep. After that, nutrition, exercise, activity, some sort of spirituality in your life. It doesn't have to be a religious body, although a lot of people do benefit from that. Helping others is another wonderful way to get out of yourself and to give back to other people. Asking for help was huge for me when I was in those situations. If I had not had the courage to ask for help, I would not have gotten through it on my own. And some people like to journal. They find that very helpful. My husband has been journaling his life since he was a teenager, and he continues to do it today in his 50s. He just gets a lot out of it. So one of the things I talk about in the book are the 3 C's. And I feel like this is pretty important, and what got me through those stressful years. And once I was able to put down the alcohol and work on my personal growth, I was able to thrive. And so what does all of this have to do with organization? Well, people grieve in different ways, and they deal with or avoid dealing with things in certain ways. And one of them can be shopping. They try to fill that void by shopping, and this is a way to accumulate things to make them feel good, to get that bargain, to acquire something. So many of my clients have developed this habit, and then they come home and the bag just sits in a corner or on the sofa, and they never even empty the contents of the bag because they've already gotten the high from going out and buying it or getting the bargain. I've seen cars cluttered up with things. So shopping addiction can be one. Some people tend to exercise. It's not unusual for people to have more than one diagnosis. Alcohol and depression is what I had. I got diagnosed with depression when I was 3 years sober. It's not unusual for somebody to have alcoholism and an eating disorder. So with people who have chronic disorganization and hoarding disorder, you see this a lot too. Anxiety, depression, sometimes alcoholism, anger management. So there can be other things besides just the clutter. So the 3 C's can really help once that you're ready to ask for help. And the 3 C's are counseling, confidant, and cleric. Counseling is for the emotional well-being, venting, problem solving, asking for help, getting some guidance, whether it's from a therapist or a coach, a life coach maybe. Confidant is help in a specific area. Maybe you need somebody to do some repairs on your home, or you need an accountant or financial advisor to help you plan your money. Especially this is very important if you lose a spouse and things change with your financial situation. A business mentor, a sales trainer, a teacher, whatever it might be, a confidant can help you. In my case, in alcoholism, in the recovery field, everybody that is working a recovery program should have a sponsor. And this is somebody they can talk to confidentially and tell them what's going on with them and what they're struggling with, and maybe get some ideas, because when you're emotional, you can't think straight for yourself. So it helps to have a confidant in your life that can really be honest with you and say, you know, have you thought about this, or can you try that? So that has been huge for me. And then the cleric is the spiritual motivator, the cheerleader, or the deep thinker that can help you take care of your spirit. Maybe that's your priest, maybe it's your rabbi, maybe you want to finally start studying Buddhism, yoga. whatever it might be, but you have to tap into that power that's greater than you. So those are the 3 C's. Now, planning your day or planning to do some organization, especially if you have one project. I've had a client who's had a few major health problems over the last few years. And when you go through something like that, I've had a few clients go through that. They're inundated with paperwork from the hospitals and the doctors. So getting that stuff together, understanding it, knowing what you can keep and what you can get rid of, and then finding a way to keep it in order so that you can reference it if need be, can help reduce so much anxiety for you. So just planning ahead and doing some uncluttering can help your brain to reduce that anxiety. Using a calendar to plot when you're going to do these things. I use an 8-step process with my clients, and it starts with scheduling time on a specific date at a specific time to actually do the work, whether that's with me to guide them, or when I'm doing presentations for the public, I share this in a handout and I say, if you're going to do this on your own, this is the first step. Make an appointment with yourself and put it on your calendar, date and time that you're going to work on this. If you're one of these people that have to have all your medical forms in one place, maybe have the EOB separated out from all the pharmacy papers, or if you have 2 diagnoses, some people might have cancer and diabetes, maybe they have to keep those things separated so they can keep track of them better. Plan out when you're going to work on that. Maybe 30 minutes a week is all you need to start attacking the backlog or setting up a system that you can keep into place. Write down your goals and practice the new system that you put into place. If something new comes in the mail, hole punch it, put it in that binder with all your other forms. If that's the system that you put in place. Maybe it's a file box. Put it in the filing system. Structure and routines can make you feel like you're getting back to a routine and a normalcy. A lot of us, I'm preaching this also during the pandemic. You know, I was just reading an article in the New York Times about how since the pandemic, nobody's getting visitors. So nobody's really keeping their house that clean or that tidy. I shouldn't say nobody, but you know, I mean, I've been guilty of this myself. The days run into days, don't know what day it is. Is it that important if my kitchen floor is swept? You know, given what's going on in the world, nobody's coming to visit me. When I get sick and tired of looking at the dirty floor, I'll get around to cleaning it. But, you know, part of that is my depression. And so having a routine, like if I'm doing, like, you can pick one day a week and put one chore on each of those days. Like maybe Monday is vacuum and Tuesday is dust. You skip Wednesday because you need a day off, and Thursday might be, you know, sweeping the kitchen floor and mopping. Maybe you save the bathroom for the weekend. You have to get, it really helps to have some kind of routine going with you. It makes it easier. There's less thought involved. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and then we'll open it up for questions, is something that I think I experienced myself after I got sober. And this is something that I've recently learned about through a webinar that I associated with early on in the pandemic. And it's called post-traumatic growth. A lot of people know what post-traumatic stress is. A lot of people have never heard of post-traumatic growth, PTG. I'm going to read the definition to you. Post-traumatic growth was developed by psychologists Richard Tedeschi, PhD, and Lawrence Calhoun, PhD, in the late 1990s, and holds that people who endure psychological struggle following adversity can often see positive growth afterwards. People develop new understandings of themselves, the world they live in, how to relate to other people, the kind of future they might have, and a better understanding of how to live life, says Tedeschi. And basically, it is the positive mental shift experienced as a result of adversity. So those 3 traumatic events I went through in a 2-year period, following the 3 C's of counseling, confidant, and cleric. I went through grief counseling. I got help with my alcoholism. I went through outpatient rehab. And all those things enabled me to get my life back on track. And actually, through the spirituality of the recovery program, I was able to experience personal growth like I have never had before in my life. And so I've been able to accomplish major things in my life in the past 24 years. And I'll just touch on a few of them. And I hope that you don't see this as bragging. Some people can do this without going through any adversity at all. That's not my story. But because of what I've been through, I have learned how to walk through fear. And because of that, I've been able to learn how to drive a motorcycle. And that's one of the things I get a lot of enjoyment out of in my life today. For my 50th birthday, I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane. About a year after I got sober, I went on my first real vacation, and it was out of the country. And I had never been on an airplane before. So that was all very new to me. Very exciting, very scary, but I got through it. 8 years ago, I started my own business and started working for myself and became my own boss. And it has just been an absolute joy. And I'm here to tell you that I love being a wife and a mother and a grandmother. And just helping other people through whatever they're going through, whether that's in recovery, or I was talking on the phone today to a brand new professional organizer. She's still in another profession, but she has a plan for the next 2 years. She wants to become a professional organizer. So I did like an informational interview with her today, which is what I did when I was starting out, and people were gracious enough to talk to me about what they did. So I passed that on. I just pass it on, pass it forward. It gives you a great sense of accomplishment and gratitude and humility. So that's all I have for you tonight, and we'll open it up for questions. If you want any tips on organizing, I'm happy to share those with you right now, or if you want to talk more about my experience or your experience, I'm an open book, so ask